Well, of course, I knew his music, and Guy was a great guy to me. I mean, he treated me really well, but Guy was an artist that the reason that Guy was because he knew what he liked and he knew what he wanted musically. So I come into the office at Vector one day, and my boss, Ken Levitan, said, I need you to go over to Jim McGuire's, the photographers, because Guy has just done his photo shoot. They're looking at photos, and you need to help him pick out his press photos. So I walk in, and I knew McGuire already, and said hello to him, and then Guy's over there looking at the contact sheets on the light table. And I stuck my hand out and said, hey, Guy, I'm Lance Cowan. I work with Ken. He sent me over to help you pick out your promo shots. And Guy looked at me, and he said, just like no nonsense, the promo shots are already selected. It's like, what are you doing here? You know, that was my introduction to Guy Clark. And then of course we worked with him through the I guess it was it Old Friends or Boats to Build records was the first one I worked on. But man, and those are still among my favorite Guy Clark records. But then, you know, since then I guess I've got everything he's ever done. He was a hoot to be around, especially when we got to be with he and Towns at the same time. That was always fun. We did a benefit, and of course, you know, Towns is legendary for his excess. We did a benefit that had Towns, Guy Clark, Emmylou Harris, and Steve Earle. And everybody was afraid that Towns would have overindulged. So for 4 days, we told Towns that a TV crew was showing up to do an interview with him. And that kept him, you know, he was well behaved. So that, you know, I guess that would have been my most memorable time with Towns was getting through that benefit. But every time I was with Towns, you know, he and Guy just, you know, and I didn't even realize the extent of it till I watched Tamara Saviano's video, you know, her documentary on Guy. I never realized how intense their relationship was. So I wasn't around Towns that much, but it was always fun when I was.
Whatever year this was, did people around town look at people like Guy and Towns?
No, they were just enamored by them. You know, they walked down the street, everybody. You know, I think Steve Earle called that period the Nashville's brush with integrity. I think that's what he called it.
Great credibility scare.
That's it. The great credibility scare. You know, at that time, there was Steve, Lyle, Guy, the O'Kanes, Kevin Welch, Newgrass Revival, Nanci Griffith. These guys were all on mainstream radio. Wow. That was some good country music right there. And
Kevin Welch watches these videos from Australia, so let's say hi, Kevin.
Hey, Kevin, how you doing? Yeah, I used to go see Kevin play at the Bluebird, and it was come home and I would think, man, why am I even trying? You know, it's such a great talent.
So it wasn't just people like you and I who were down the rabbit hole, but like folks in the business looked at Guy and
yeah. When I first started working in the music business, they had this thing every year, the Harlan Howard Songwriter Bash, and all those songwriters who were anybody would show up, you know, from Roger Miller to Harlan Howard, of course. But when Nanci or Steve or Lyle showed up, everybody lined up to watch. You know, they knew what they had there. They just, they were just more attracted by the dollars that that came in when Randy Travis started, you know, with more traditional, and then of course when Garth showed up, through no fault of his own, that really, in my mind, really reshaped everything that was going on in Nashville when they realized they could actually make big money.
Don Schlitz has told me in the past that that like him and other writers would look at like David Olney and Guy.
Oh yeah, David Olney's
like
another
realizing
one.
These guys are heavyweights, you know. It just and Don's a freaking great songwriter.
No kidding.
It's always interesting to me to think of what your average person who might not be down the Guy Clark rabbit hole thought of him in real time.
You know, I think that having guys like that in town really elevated the writing. You know, because Don's you can't argue that Don's a master, an absolute master. When I've moved to town, I thought country music would be the easiest thing in the world to write. Until I started seeing Don Schlitz and Tom Schuyler and Fred Knobloch and those guys, Paul Overstreet. And I realized guys like Don, in 3 minutes, say an amazing amount and in such a simple way. Well, I think when those guys are here in town, and you got Dave Olney writing things like Jerusalem Tomorrow, and that's probably not even the best touchstone. But when there are guys like that living in town, you don't want to be playing out and have them show up in the audience and do crappy songs. That makes you want to be a writer. And I don't know what's happened now. I really don't. I mean, I hate to say I'm embarrassed by Nashville writing now, but I can't listen to mainstream country, no doubt. But I think one of the reasons Nashville was doing so well in the 90s is because people like that were in town. Of course, Harlan Howard was always here, but he was the same kind of writer too. He could write some pretty remarkable stuff. Roger Miller was not a slouch either. So it's Roger Cook was here. Of course, John Prine was hanging out here. Was there a better writer in town than John Prine? I don't think so.
Or any other town.
And he, one of my friends told me the funniest story about John Prine. He said he was watching this guy play at a little club called Bogies. And the guy was up on stage and he started this song called John Prine Ain't Got Nothing on Me. He's singing away. All of a sudden he hears on the background vocal singing along with him, this guy singing. He turns around, it's John Prine has jumped him. So you really had to watch your P's and Q's.
Wonder where that guy is.
You'd get called on. Yeah, I don't think he did very well after that.
He's got a good story wherever he's at.
No kidding. Isn't that great? Wouldn't you love to see that happen? I'd love to have been there for that.
There's another reason to love John Prine is he'd laugh at that.
He'd laugh at it. He had a great sense of humor. But yeah, that I think that was a big deal here. No matter where you went, there was always the danger of Harlan Howard sitting in the back room with Nanci Griffith drinking. And you don't want to play crummy songs for guys like that. You pull out the best. And if you're a writer and that's even if you get involved in those writers rounds, you don't want to have a bad song. Even if they don't say anything. For me, I couldn't believe it, for one thing. It's sad when you see your heroes go. And it's not like Guy and I were close toward the end. I don't think I'd seen him in 3 or 4 years. But I was amazed at how fast he went. And I went to the show, and they had not only Joe Ely, and Terry came up, Terry Allen. Steve was there, obviously. Jack Ingram, Jerry Jeff Walker came. That was a big deal. And the reason they did is because they loved Guy. That's the only reason that they would have done that. Because they traveled a long way to pay tribute to Guy Clark. Now, from the business side, as his publicist, he was not always the easiest guy I dealt with. But when he liked you and he respected you as a songwriter, he was, the guys who knew Guy on those levels loved him. They just loved him.